Hey, how's it going, guys? Well, today we're going to be talking about a new folder that I've been carrying and finally want to do a review on it. Very interesting design, very innovative. This is from CRKT, Columbia River Knife and Tool, if you don't know. And this is called their Homefront. This is a Ken Onion design, and what makes this knife special and unique and different is its capability of coming apart with no tools. That's right. They use field strip technology. That's the, I believe, the official term for this mechanism and or mechanisms. But yeah, it's super cool. Of course, I'm going to give you a demo and show you how that works and everything. But first, I want to talk about the knife itself. So basically have like a medium-sized folder here. As you saw there, it is a flipper design. Okay, so a little flipper on the back. Super smooth, easy to use the flipper, pops out every single time. If you're one of those people that do not like the flipper, you can also kind of grip this down here, the middle finger and the thumb. You can see there's enough blade exposed where if you angle it just right, you can start that blade out and finish it with the thumb. So you don't necessarily have to flip it out nice and fast. If you're somewhere where that may scare people, not really all that much of an issue. Like I said, you can kind of get in there and grip it slowly to open it. But I know some people out there just aren't fans of flipper knives. As far as some quick specs on this, our blade is 3.5 inches. It's a drop point style blade, hollow grounds. All right, it's an AUS 8. There's a double fuller design on here, so you see the cutouts on both sides. This blade has lots of belly. I found it to be a great slicer. The only drawback for some, it may not be a big deal for others, but the tip isn't super pointy. It is a tip. It does pierce fine in opening cardboard boxes and such. But if you're one of those people that like that just scalpel tip, super, like kind of a needle point, as some people refer to it as, this lacks that. But I don't think it would make that much sense on this design anyway, because this is kind of a militant type rugged design overall and kind of a feel for the knife. So something like that may be a little bit extra fragile. So I don't really see it as a drawback, but it is something I noticed. It's not a super pointy tip. Like I can kind of bop my finger on there, even though this is super sharp right now. As far as our handle, we have an aluminum handle, 4.7 inches in the closed position. Okay, that's our length. And there is a kind of half back spacer here. We get a better look once I take the knife apart. All right, so half, 50% flow through type design. This is a liner lock. It's a sub frame liner lock, so it's not, there's no actual liners in here. When I take it apart again, you'll see how that's set up. But as far as the centering, absolutely perfect, which is extra cool considering this knife comes apart and goes back together so easily. I think maybe you get thrown off, but it doesn't. As far as the weight, 4.8 ounces, and the overall length is 8.1 inches. All right, so let's stop for a second and talk about price, okay? Because there is a new version of this knife, which I haven't tried yet, but it is also the more affordable version. So before we get too much into the review, I do want to talk about price because that's a huge factor as to whether or not people actually go out and buy these knives. You may want certain knives, but if it's out of your budget or you don't think it's worth the money, you pass them up. So this usually sells for about $100 to $120. Now that being said, CRKT has this for sale on Amazon for $70. That's a huge difference, 70 to 120, that's a $50 difference. That's another knife. So it's hard to say whether this is a $70 knife or a $120 knife. But as it sits right now, a lot of the dealers do have this model for about $100 to $120. So that's the more common price you're going to see. However, you can find your deals. Like I said, on Amazon, it's about $70. I saw one on eBay. I don't know if it's still available right now, but it was, I think, $89 or $90, something like that. So you can get them for under $100. I'll put it that way. But that is a huge jump. So that's a significant difference. Someone out there would buy this for $70, and that same person would not buy it for $120. So as far as price, it remains to be seen where that kind of goes in the future. But if you do like this design, as you watch the review and say, oh, it's really cool, but I'm not going to spend that much, they do have another version out now. This came out long after I got this one, but I believe it is the K250 Kay something P. K250K TP? No. K250K XP, I believe is what it is. Anyway, you can look it up. But it is the same knife. There's a couple differences. They don't use AUS 8. They use a 1.4116 steel, which, yes, I know most of you have no idea what I'm talking about. I'll talk about that in a second. Black handles, no fullers. That's essentially the difference. Take off the fullers or put the material back on. All right, so we have just that drop point blade. black handles instead of this kind of greenish gray brown thing going on, and the different steel. Now the 1.4116 stainless is, if I'm not mistaken, the same steel that's used in Swiss Army knives. Okay, very easy to sharpen, very high corrosion resistant steel. Most people have experience with Swiss Army knives, okay, Victorinox knives. That's the steel, all right? So, you know, if you said, oh, I never used 1.411. If you know knife steels, you probably owned a Swiss Army knife and you've probably used that steel, you just didn't know it. Because they don't advertise that or market on their blades. But I am fairly certain that is the stainless that they use for Victorinox knives. But yeah, so if you want the cheaper version, or if you just happen to like the black handles, that's the way to go. And that's like 60 to 65. Okay, so let's keep this whole idea at about a $70 knife, even though you may see them for sale for $120. Because I know that's a big turnoff to people, is the steel choice and the price. But it is what it is. Right now, this knife is a very, very unique, interesting design. If you want it, that's the price you have to pay for it. But it's nice to know that they already understand that not everyone's going to fork over that dough. So they made a quote-unquote cheaper version of it, which is super cool. If you happen to have the other version, the K250 KXP, let me know down in the comments what you think yours. So anyway, moving on. So now you know the price. Let's talk about how this thing works as far as taking it apart. Now, there's basically two different mechanisms that you are manipulating. The first one is very clear and obvious. There's a lever here by the pivot, you know, and then we have a gear, which may not be so obvious because it kind of looks like more jimping, but right on the end here, this is actually kind of a gear pattern, and basically it's just a screw. You can see the screw going through the frame. All right. So if you pull away from you can see how that's rotating. And what we're doing is we're just unscrewing the front part of the knife, okay, front scale. And you hear that little click? That means it's done. This is unscrewed now. You come to the top and you push this lever over, and the knife comes apart. Just like that. Need to pop off a little bit. So then we have our blade here, and that is it. So we have a three-piece knife. All these other parts are secured down. Nothing's gonna fall out. I know the one question you might have is, oh man, what if the pivot thing falls out? No, the pivot screw is not going to fall out. Okay, you can shake this, dunk it in water, move it around a little bit. Nothing's going anywhere. All right. So you can see our backspacer here with our screw integrated into it. It gives you a better picture of how that works. And as I said before, this is a subframe liner lock, so it's not a full liner that's the lock. It's actually a separate piece of metal, okay, that is mounted inside here, okay? And on the other side of the knife, we have clear instructions in case you forget how to put it back together. So it says, reassembly instructions, crkt.com/field strip technology. So it says, press and hold the pivot. Rotate the wheel, and then lever down. Very simple, right? So, this is very important to note, is that if you don't have practice with this, which I didn't when I first got it, no one does, it's a little finicky. In other words, you get the knife back together, and then this, or almost back together, and then this little lever you want to push down. And you think, what am I doing wrong? Well, it's because this pivot has to be lined up perfectly in order to be able to rotate around and lock, okay? So when you're doing this, at some point, if you're pushing down on this and it's not going anything, don't force it. It's just not lined up right. So take it apart, try it again, okay? But after using this for a while, it's a little bit easier to take it, apart and put it back together. So far, I've probably taken this apart a little over a dozen times, put it back together. The last time I did it, I did struggle a little bit. And then I just took it back apart, tried it again, and it was fine. Just have to make sure that the pivot is lined up properly. Okay, so put the knife back in the closed position. You can see there's two main parts that are important to line up here. We have our track, which goes through this pin, or the blade basically rotates around this pin, and then we have our pivot. All right, so make sure those are both lined up, right? And then push down. And then when you're doing this, the back of the pivot here, just keep your finger on it. Put the front down on the knife, pinch this together, okay? So there's no wiggle room anymore, so this is firmly being pinched. Okay, rotate this forward now. And let me rotate it back so you can see the gap. See the gap in the handles as I rotate this forward? You can see them coming closer because it's basically just being screwed down. Okay, once you have a little resistance, just make it a little bit snug. Hand tight. Don't make that super, super tight. It's not necessary because then it's just going to be hard to undo again. And while still pinching firmly up top here, just slide your lever back over. And that's it. Still shoots open. Very easy to use. And surprisingly, still perfectly centered every single time, which is awesome. So there you go. It's that easy. Comes apart and goes back together in a pinch. I think this is very advantageous to the military, and I think that's kind of why they went with this military type theme. You know, between the fullers and the star pattern here and the coloration on this one, the heavy jimping, it does have kind of a military feel to me, and it makes sense because this would be great for soldiers as far as a folding knife goes. Obviously a fixed blade would be much preferred, but if you can get away with carrying more gear, having an extra knife on you and a folding design like this, you would need to be able to have the capability of taking it apart in a pinch. This could be great for any kind of emergency service people. You know, besides military, police, EMTs, firefighters, you know, anywhere where you need your knife and you might not have access to the tools or have the capability of carrying all the extra tools to take your knives apart. Also, it could be a time issue. You know, you need your knife now. It's dirty, it's not opening, it's not closing right, it's not functioning right, whatever. You can literally just pop this open in a matter of seconds, clean it, put it back together, and you're good to go. Besides the military, because again, I would imagine a fixed blade would be much more preferred than a folding knife in general, across the board. I think this would really appeal to the outdoorsmen and outdoors women that are out there, because you could be out on a trail hiking or something and you want to take your knife apart, clean it. That's fine. Take it apart, dunk it in the water, you know, pat it dry, boom, put it back together. You don't have to worry about taking out your tools and, more importantly, losing screws, losing pivot screws and body screws. I mean, this is a super, super cool design, and I think this really, really opens the door, in my opinion, for a modular knife system. I'm saying it now, mark my words, it's only a matter of time before someone or some company picks up on this idea. Think about Glocks. You buy a main gun, and there's a million aftermarket parts for it, right? You want to shoot a different caliber, get a new barrel, you know, new magazine to go with that. You know, different length barrels. Look at SIG with their different size frames. You know, having a modular system is a great way to build upon a specific tool. So now that they have this knife, and they're coming out with a couple different versions of this knife, I would love to see them sell just blades for this knife. So let's say you buy the Homefront, but you know, today you want to carry a Tanto blade or a fully serrated blade. Maybe you have the capability of buying just that blade. I'd love to see like 10 different blades that you can just buy and then, you know, swap out with this handle. And then vice versa, a bunch of different handle designs, whether they're different colors or whatever, but they all can interconnect. You can use so many different combinations to get the exact knife feel you want, or, you know, the specific design you want for your daily task. I think that would be awesome. A modular knife system. So hopefully someone out there who's important enough to make that happen is listening and watching this video. But yeah, it's just super cool. And I would imagine they would stick with this for a while. I would imagine it'd be very popular. I really like it. I think it's awesome. Drawbacks on the knife, things I don't like about it. Something I've noticed pretty soon after I got it is uncomfortable feeling in my fingertip. And for a long time, I didn't really understand why. I thought maybe it was the jimping on this, but there's no way, because the jimping on the flipper is so small. But I figured it out. Here's what's happening. When I flip this open one time, it doesn't hurt, it's no big deal. But I play with my knives, you know, so I flip them open and I close it, open and close it. And after a while, you know, it starts hurting my finger. Some knives more than other, but this one, it started getting really sore fairly quickly. So this is what I discovered. And really looking at it, I'm opening this blade just a little bit to show you this. When you flip this open, watch my pointer finger. As I'm coming down, the tip of my finger rubs on the bottom portion of jimping, okay, these protrusions. It happens every time. Doesn't matter if I'm holding it up here, which obviously would catch all of it, or if I use just the very tip of my finger, you know, to push this out, which I almost can't. I have to use the meat of it, but let's use the very tip. Even as I come down, you can see it just catches that jimping. So what's happening is that every time I use this flipper, I'm rubbing the tip of my finger on this jimping. And although the jimping is not super aggressive, it's very deep. Okay, so to just go like this, imagine if the flipper's not there, this is what I'm doing all day. I'm going like this. It hurts. So if you're one of those people that just use your knife constantly, might be an issue for you. For the average user, one or two flips, it really doesn't bother you at all. But it is definitely something that I noticed with constant use. Another thing which is, again, I point it out occasionally, sometimes I don't point it out, but it's something, it's a pet peeve of mine, but it's really not that big of a deal because it's such a common occurrence in the knife industry across the board. As far as production knives go, you'll see this 9 out of 10 times. But right down here, the grind, or I should say our edge, stops before the grind stops. I would love to see this edge, the actual sharp part of the blade, go all the way down to the bottom of the grind. And then maybe a little blade choil. In this case, it doesn't even need the choil because you naturally have kind of an indentation here by the ricasso. But yeah, I mean, my blade stops there, basically, where my fingernail is. It's not a huge deal, and most people don't even care, but I'm kind of nitpicking because the real knife enthusiasts get bothered by stuff like that. It's a minor detail, but I'm kind of used to it by now. It's not a big deal. Anyway, yeah, besides that little nothingness, which, like I said, most knives have anyway, the only real downside to this knife, the only real negative that I see, besides possibly the price for the steel choice, is that right there. Just the little bit of fatigue or extra fatigue I get on the tip of my finger when I'm using the flipper. But yeah, as you can see here, there is no lanyard hole at all. Not a big deal for me, maybe a big deal for you. But obviously, because of the design, there's not really a good place to put it. It would have to be way up here. It wouldn't make much sense. As far as the pocket clip, I absolutely love it. Again, very militant looking, squared off, simple. It's kind of a lighter spring steel. Okay, so it bends easy, which, you know, it could be easily hyperextended. In other words, once it's in the pocket, if your pocket clip grabs on something, I've had this happen before with like seatbelts getting in and out of cars. If it grabs on something, it may bend easier than other clips out there. But the advantage to this is that it's very easy to carry on denim or thicker cargo pants. Okay, so I haven't had any problem getting in and out of the pocket. And again, because it's riding on a smooth piece of aluminum, it doesn't want to grab too hard. Okay, so it's not loose in the pocket by any means, but it's just easy to get in and out. There is texturing on here, but it's visual. You can't even feel it really. The difference between rubbing here and rubbing here is so minute. It's just for looks. But yeah. So if you like the idea, but you're not a big fan of AUS 8, I don't know why you wouldn't be. It's a great steel. But if you just are stuck on the idea that you're not going to pay over $100 for a knife with AUS 8s, that's cool. That's fine. Check out the other model with the 1.4116 steel. All right, so before I go, I want to time myself, see how fast I can get this thing apart and put back together, just because I like the idea of racing, because it causes stress, and we'll see how much I fumble on this. I've never done this before, by the way. I promise, no practice with this, but I'm just curious myself. So I'm gonna hit start, take the knife apart, so we have all three parts separate, lift my hands up so I'm not touching it, put it back together, and lock it, obviously open it, and then I'll hit start again, like I'm ready to use it. All right, so on mark, get set, go. I say that to Gus all the time. Gus got up and ran. Oh, see? Almost forgot the lever already. Okay, it's apart. Okay. There we go. Oh, there we go. 28 seconds. That's not bad. I'm sure if you practice this, you could probably get down to like 15 seconds. Bing, bam, boom, right? But hey, even if it was a minute, I would say a minute is darn fast to be able to take your knife apart. I know that's bugging you. I have a little moisture under my screen protector. Yes, I'll take care of that. This way you guys can sleep tonight. Anyway. Yeah, so I would say 28 seconds is not bad for taking your knife apart and putting it back together. I would highly doubt you can do that with any other knife at the moment. At least that I'm aware of right at this moment. And you can see it's still perfectly centered. Okay, and this is nice and snug too in the back. So yeah, super cool. My overall assessment of the Homefront, huge thumb up. I really like it. I really do. Obviously, I want to see it cheaper. I could say that about any knife, but the fact that they are making a cheaper version, there you go. They're already on it. They already understand that people like it now. They got the feedback. People say, yeah, it's awesome, too expensive, don't want to buy one. And they're like, all right, well, we'll make it a little cheaper. So that's cool. So my future hopes and dreams, again, for a modular knife system. I love for CRKT to make, like I said, 10 different blade styles, 10 different handle colorations or whatever, and you can mix and match and buy them whenever you want. You could buy the full knife, obviously, and then once you own the knife, you could buy new blades or you could buy new handles or whatever. And like I said, just mix and match. I think it would be a super cool idea. So hopefully that comes out sometime in the future. In the meantime, if you guys have a Homefront, let me know down below what you think of yours, but I absolutely love mine. It's just, I don't know, it definitely, I know they call it a brown, and to me, it just, you're not gonna be able to really tell the true color from a video. You gotta see it in person, but it's just, sometimes I look at it and it looks gray. It just looks like straight up gray, and other times I look at it and it looks like OD green. Just depends on the lighting, I guess, but yeah, it is what it is. So there you go, CRKT Homefront. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you soon. Take care.